Fake Folklore. This is a podcast series where I have taken the time to go through The Witch's Guide to Fairy Folklore by Eden McCoy, and we'll be going through each creature one at a time and discussing the reasons why it is not factual. In this series, I have integrated a lot of other people's work to explain to you the actual folklore behind all of these listed in the encyclopedia. I hope that you will see this as an opportunity to learn and to grow, so no matter what part of your witchcraft you are in, you will know exactly what you are getting yourself into. And now, let us begin. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fake Folklore. This is the podcast series that I have been doing for a couple of episodes now. I do believe this is episode 2, and we are starting with the seas this time. So it kind of came to my brain the other day that I probably needed to lay out the thesis of this podcast just a little bit clearer. So if it's not apparently obvious from my intro, this series where I address the misinformation in Eden McCoy's 1994 book, A Witch's Guide to Fairy Folk. It's specifically the creatures that are in the encyclopedia in the back of the book, which are misguided at best and downright wrong at worst. So some of the creatures she cites straight up don't exist, or are combined with others to make a whole different creature, or are misspelled completely. The reason I feel it is so important to point out the misinformation in this book is because most of it has been regurgitated on other online dictionaries as fact. And I want folks to realize how McCoy's homogenization, no matter how well intended at the time, can be harmful to places, people, and culture. The way I have attempted to craft these videos is to present the material that is written in the book and then bring on other people whose videos I have discovered through YouTube to talk about the specific creature or entity in question, and to kind of clear up some of the misunderstandings that were worked into McCoy's book. My goal is to make folks in the pagan and or witch talk community really think about the books they buy and consume, especially when McCoy's book presents itself as a guide for working with the Fae without really understanding the culture they come from, which can actually be very dangerous if working with them is considered a closed practice. So yeah, I just wanted to make that very clear in the beginning if it wasn't abundantly clear in the last couple of episodes, just because I do wonder if my message is actually getting across. But anyway, let us just get right into the first one here, and this is actually an example of McCoy misspelling this particular creature. So the way she has it spelled here in this book is Cailleach, and she's missing the H. It's Cailleach Bhuer. Apologies if I said that last part wrong. So what she has quoted here in the book is that the land of origin for this creature is Scotland, which it does not appear to be in my research. Actually, it is Gaelic. The other origins are similar fairies that are in other Celtic countries. The other names are the Stone Woman. The element is water. Appearance and temperament, the Cailleach is one of a kind. She is an old woman who walks by night carrying her walking stick, her carrying crow on her left shoulder. However, her reputation as dangerous and ill-tempered may be a mistaken one. It is possible that this fear of her was created by the early Scottish churchmen seeking to eradicate the vestiges of the old religion by demonizing its crone mythology. Most time active at night, which is another falsity, it's winter. Lore. The word Cailleach literally means old woman, and the Irish spelling Cailleach is used when referring to the crone goddess. This is from the same root as the more well-known Gaelic word for a young girl, Cailin, Colleen. There is only one Cailleach Bhuer, and she is probably a vestige of the old crone goddess of the Celts. She is depicted as wearing either black or blue-white tattered garments and is intimately associated with the winter season. She is said to dwell in the land which is always in winter, another likeness to the crone goddess. Her power is greatest from Samhain to Beltane. She had actually originally written Ostara here, but it's Beltane, at which time it wanes considerably. She carries a staff made of holly topped with the head of a carrion crow, another symbol of the crone. If one is touched by it, it kills instantly. Scottish legends say that the staff is buried under a tree for summer and retrieved again after Samhain night. If one can find that staff, they will have power over the destiny of all human life. In modern Scotland, Cailleach Bhuer is more commonly called by her English name, the Blue Hag. She still walks alone through the Highlands at night, where she is greatly feared. Where to find her? In the Scottish Highlands, or near the Western Sea in Fairyland. The best time to look for her is during the waning moon. How to contact? Do not fear her, but do not use caution. Try making an evocation to her with the same respect and reverence you would give to the goddess in her guise as crone. She is most likely a goddess, merely one of a devalued state, which I wrote a little note here saying, not at all. She's primordial, which stretches beyond time. Magical help and ritual help? Undetermined. But if she is a part of the goddess, even one who has been devalued over the years, this fairy could aid in any type of magical and ritual with powerful results. So, again, this is one of those things, like, we semi-touched on the Blue Hag in my previous episode, with, Black Annis, who is also called the Blue Hag because of her face. And if I remember correctly, Cailleach does have vestiges in her face which do turn blue, but I'm actually going to turn it over to Story Crow, who is going to tell you the actual mythology of this particular goddess.
Hello, welcome back. So, the Cailleach, the oldest goddess. So this is a goddess well known in the folklore of the Gaelic-speaking world. So that is Scotland, the Scottish Highlands, the Western Isles of Scotland, and Ireland itself. Less so in the southern half of Britain, England and Wales. But possibly a very old goddess, the Cailleach. She is a version of the Great Mother, really. She's said to be mother to all the other gods and ancestor to everyone, including all of us. She's an old crone, or a hag. In fact, the word Cailleach means crone or hag. Etymologically, it actually means hooded one or cowled one. I believe it's where we get the English word cowl or hood, Cailleach. So, old woman wearing a cowl, a bit like a witch, the archetypal image of a witch. So that's what she is, but she's so much more than your common or garden wicked witch. She's the Great Mother. She's also a weather god. So the Cailleach, she makes storms and rain, she makes winter. She's also synonymous with winter. In Scotland, she's also equated with Bhuer or Bera, the queen of winter. So she's the personification of the winter months. So she rules between Samhain, Halloween, and Imbolc, which we've just had, the 1st of February. So now we're coming into the time of the goddess Bridget, the time of spring. But the winter months, the Cailleach rules. In fact, I think she rules till Beltane, actually. Imbolc is just the sign that her power is weakening. So from Samhain to Beltane, that whole period, which is the Celtic winter, almost at the end. So the Cailleach, she also made the world. She literally sculpted the world. She also kind of is the world beneath our feet. Interesting parallels there there's a lot of interesting parallels between the Cailleach and other Indo-European deities. So a common thing in Indo-European creation myths, so both in Celtic and Norse and Hindu mythology, is that there was a primordial being which is kind of killed to make the world. Ymir in Norse mythology, and it's a common motif. So the Cailleach sort of is the very ground beneath our feet. Her bones are the mountains, but she also sculpted them. So she's got a stone hammer that summons forth lightning. So very much an Indo-European weather god in that aspect. Think of Thor with his lightning hammer. Think of Zeus. And with this hammer, she sculpts the landscape. And we can really see this with the landscape of, say, the Scottish Highlands. It's so old, it's so weathered. It looks like it's been sculpted long ago. I think it's one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world. Not like the Rockies or the Himalaya, which are very young, geologically speaking. That's why they're so pointy. Scotland, ancient landscape. So you can really see how this hag of winter could have sculpted it. She also had some help in this. So her first batch of offspring were frost giants, like Greek titans or Norse storm giants, these fighty primordial beings that would chuck boulders at each other and make storms with their fighting and sculpt the hills. Many of the geological features of Scotland and Ireland were said to have been made by the Cailleach. This, again, is a very common thing in British and Northern European mythology. If there's a big mountain, often it's the work of gods or giants, usually in Britain and Ireland's case, giants. So the Schiehallion, big mountain in Scotland, Ben Nevis, Britain's tallest mountain, was made by boulders falling from the Cailleach's basket, or from her apron, or maybe her sons just lobbing rocks at each other. So you can get an idea of the size of these deities. In some versions of these stories, the mountains are made as stepping stones for the Cailleach to walk over, so she doesn't get her apron wet in the snow, I don't know. But yeah, the idea that the very earth was sculpted, shaped by the Cailleach and her offspring, that's how old she is. In terms of what she represents, well, winter, yes, the bringer of storms. Remember, in ancient times, if the Cailleach is that old, winter was very much something to be feared, very, very much so. So you very much had to placate these winter gods. In fact, in a lot of places in Scotland, there's in the Schiehallion mountain I just spoke of, there's a rock shaped like the Schiehallion mountain, possibly an act of sympathetic magic there, with a little offering bowl carved in it. This is Neolithic, this bowl, perhaps to appease the deity of the mountain, so there would be no storms today, please, and some nice weather. That deity could have been a great mother goddess similar to the Cailleach. She also represents wisdom, the wisdom that comes with age and the learning that happens through harsh lessons. So this is kind of more the psychological meaning, interpretation behind the Cailleach and crone goddesses in general. We have to suffer, we're human, but we can turn those sufferings into lessons, and much good can come from them. That's sort of, in a nutshell, that's sort of the psychological meaning behind figures like the Cailleach. It's also worth mentioning that as a crone deity, the Cailleach has a triple aspect, and this is a very, very common thing in contemporary paganism, but there's also a lot of evidence to suggest that it's a very old thing as well, the triple goddess. Robert Graves talks about this in The White Goddess. It's a very, very common motif. So you probably already know about this. There's the virgin as one aspect of the goddess, mother, the maternal aspect, obviously, and crone, which is sort of the distilled wisdom and a sort of necessary destroyer. You know, she gives you a lesson. Yeah, I'll tell you what. But she doesn't sugarcoat it, does she, the crone? So that's what crone energy is all about, and that's what the Cailleach represents. But as I've suggested in my previous video about the Cailleach and the goddess Bridget, the Cailleach sort of represents all three. In fact, most goddesses represent all three. They're sort of squashed into one. They're just sometimes displaying one or the other. So the Cailleach, when winter is past, she actually, in some versions of this folklore, becomes the goddess Bridget, the goddess bride, the goddess of spring, in the more virginal aspect, turning into the mother and then back into crone, into winter, and then the whole cycle just repeats. Now, for me, this is part of the evidence, possibly, that the Cailleach, or something like the Cailleach, is a very, very ancient deity. So the number 3 is very important across the Celtic-speaking world. But specifically in Britain, we get triple goddesses that may or may not have been virgin, mother, crone type triptychs. There's many from Roman Britain, which is very interesting because when the Romans came along, they sort of illuminated the gods that were already here, because the Iron Age Celts didn't make anthropomorphic representations of deities. That was a Roman idea, very, very literal-minded, the Romans. So, a triple goddess. We also get triple hooded figures in Britain. So, very interesting parallel. We don't really know what they mean. They're sometimes seem to be protector goddesses, sometimes seem to be sort of bounty-giving, like the triple mothers, the matras, they're called. So, evidence of this triple goddess in pre-Roman Celtic Britain, which perhaps gives us a clue that the Cailleach is a very, very old deity. If we go further back into the Neolithic, again, great mother goddesses, we can assume may have been part of the mixed bag of belief systems, just from the architecture of stone circles and burial mounds and henges and chambered tombs. Quite often the symbology could be when the light on a particular solstice or equinox comes through and impregnates the dark passage tomb, say, of Newgrange in Ireland. This symbology could be Sky Father impregnating Earth Mother. So great goddess, Earth Mother, that is the landscape. That idea resonates with the Cailleach. So perhaps this is a very, very, very old idea. But perhaps it's a very, 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 very new idea as well. Ronald Hutton is your man to go to. If you haven't heard of Ronald Hutton, please go and check him out. He's a very eccentric character. And if you're interested in paganism, both ancient and modern, and the history of witchcraft and fun stuff like that, go and check out Ronald Hutton. He went to the same university as me, Bristol, funnily enough. In fact, he was a lecturer there. Used to walk past him. Don't know why I've included that in this video, but I did. So Ronald Hutton has an idea that this goddess, the Cailleach, may be a very recent emergent phenomena, maybe as recent as the 18th or even 19th century, when there was a popular resurgence in pagan things. His argument for that is there's not a lot of evidence in the literary record for the Cailleach before the medieval period. So he says this is probably a post-medieval goddess, possibly, which is interesting because it suggests that non-Christian deities can emerge emerge out of the collective human unconscious, to use a Jungian phrase, after the advent of Christianity. But I would argue that she could be both. The Cailleach is both a very ancient deity, with possible evidence of a similar character being revered in Celtic and pre-Celtic Britain, but also could have re-emerged in a new form in the last 200 years. The two things aren't mutually exclusive. I find that interesting about deities. Sometimes they emerge and then recede back into the collective unconscious and they emerge again. That's why deities are so interesting. There's a lot of other folklore surrounding the Cailleach. Like I mentioned, certain geographical features in Britain and Ireland are said to be made by her, but also in terms of weather divination. So this might be interesting for viewers in the USA, because I think there's a similar tradition around Groundhog Day about predicting whether there'll be a good summer ahead. So as far as the Cailleach is concerned, on Imbola, 1st of February, Candlemas Day, Groundhog Day, if you have good weather, like we just had a few days ago, you might have a long winter and possibly a bad summer. If you have a bad Imbola, rain and hail, then you'll have a good summer. Last year, this was true. It hailed on Imbola, and we had a blinding hot summer all across the world, which may or may not have been a good thing, depending on your views. This year, we had quite good weather on Imbola, so it looks like winter's set to hang around for a while longer, if the weather divination is true. Another interesting thing, folklorically, about the Cailleach, when the Cailleach was defeated and Bridget takes over as Queen of Summer, she, in some stories, she throws her hammer away in rage and it lands under a holly bush. And that's why grass never grows under holly bushes. I love little links between the natural world in terms of the botanical world and folklore. There's so much, I love this sort of thing. We can also compare with the Cailleach other hags in Celtic mythology, say Ceridwen, the Welsh witch and primordial goddess. She's very interesting. She also often has a triple aspect. She's a crone, but also a mother. Similar to the Cailleach, you know, that she's a bit ambivalent. She can be cruel, but also very loving. So now, there's another goddess worth mentioning here. And this is very interesting to me. It's actually an Indian goddess, the goddess Kali, who you've probably heard of. Interesting name similarity, Kali, Cailleach, Ceridwen. Etymologically, I don't think they're connected. Kali means dark mother. Cailleach, as I've said, means hooded. But they're very similar goddesses, and maybe they share a similar Proto-Indo-European root. So the Proto-Indo-European people that went on to be the ancestors of the Vedic peoples of India and the Celtic peoples of Britain and Ireland. Perhaps they shared a similar goddess, and the Cailleach and Kali both emerged out of that now lost goddess, because the similarities are very, very strong. The Kali is a destructive goddess, but also creative, necessary destruction. So there's a similar thing going on there. The Great Mother, the Dark Mother. Similar things. They're also both blue. The Cailleach is described as being dark blue, and so is Kali. The Cailleach also only has one eye, which ties you into a lot of one-eyed nature deities in Celtic folklore as well. So possibly an ancient goddess with Indo-European or pre-Indo-European origins, the Cailleach, or possibly a much more recent deity that has emerged in the last couple of hundred years. Something to ponder there, but I find the Cailleach really, really fascinating. Just this old hag of winter who gives us a harsh lesson, but a necessary one. Thanks very much for watching. See you later.
And now we have the story of the Stone Woman. The ancient Maya people established a civilization that stretched across a large swath of Central America. Dozens of Maya ruins are a popular tourist attraction and destination these days. One of them is Zunitunich. It's the location of a ghost story that's been making its rounds since 1893. A researcher working in that area of Belize saw that what he later would describe as the Mayan Maiden, gliding up a crumbling staircase of the site's main pyramid. The man was stunned and continued to watch a woman move up the stairs wearing a white gown of which was her back was nearly hidden by her long, gorgeous flowing hair. At one point, the woman turned and stared back at the man. He described her eyes as piercing, glowing red. When she turned away from him, she vanished. Sightings of the Stone Woman continue to this very day. It is believed that in life, she may have lived within the city which the ruins she now haunts, and that she was likely a human sacrifice who died on top of that pyramid.
And so the next little creature that we're going to get into here is the Kallikantzaori. And again, I apologize if I said that wrong. And once again, this is an example of McCoy spelling it wrong. She spelled it Callikantzaori, and it's Kallikantzaori. So the land of origin is Greece. She also had Albania and Italy written down, and no, it's Greece. Other origins, none known. Other names, none known. The element is earth. Appearance and temperament. The Kallikantzaori are small, skinny, and always nude. They are trooping fairies who, instead of riding horses, ride chickens. They wear elaborate headgear on their raids and have the feet of various animals. Most time active, Yule. The lore. The Kallikantzaori are all either partially or totally blind, though no lore tells us how they came to be this way. They spend all their time trooping together, especially at Yule, when they heartily celebrate the rebirth of the pagan sun gods. They are often accompanied on their raids by a host of other crippled fairies who are frightening to look at, though this has nothing to do with their infirmaries, but with their grotesque appearance in general. Italian fairy lore tells us that when these customs were transferred to Christians, it was noticed that the Kallikantzaori vanish after Twelfth Night, and do not return again until the next midwinter eve. They like to foul fresh water, but a touch of hyssop is reputed to counteract this. However, if you would rather not have these fairies around, Nancy Arrowsmith, author of A Field Guide to the Little People, says that burning an old shoe will drive them away. Where to find them? Look for them at Yule and in the winter of Fairyland. And I wrote a note here saying, do not do this, because these fairies are actually very malevolent. How to contact? Call to them and identify yourself as a friend. Offer them some pork, as that is their favorite food. No, don't do that. Do not do that at all, and you're going to see why. Magical ritual and help? Undetermined. So, once again, a lot of wild claims being made by McCoy. And I would have to look up this field guide to the little people to see what that is all about. But if it's in the same vein as McCoy, I'm going to say that probably a good book to steer away from. But anyway.
In the realm of Greek folklore, there exists a strange group of creatures known as the Kallikantzaroi. These mischievous goblins hold a special place in traditional tales, and are said to emerge during the 12 days of Christmas. So, what are the Kallikantzaroi? Well, there are these goblins that live underground that during the 12 days of Christmas they come up to the surface and start causing havoc. While they're underground, their main goal is to chop down the world tree and, well, bring about the end of the world. But during the time that they're above ground, they just want to cause a bunch of mayhem. Unfortunately for them, when they come back underground, they see the world tree has basically repaired itself, and they start the process all over again every single year. Funny thing is, year after year, they always get so close in chopping down the tree, but for some reason, Christmas distracts them so much that they completely forget. Not like mentioned before, their break is during the 12 days of Christmas. That's from Christmas Eve through New Year, through other festivities that takes place throughout this period, until January 6th on Epiphany Day, also known as Theophany, which is supposed to be the day that Jesus Christ was baptized in the River Jordan. During this short window, they can roam around freely on Earth, causing all sorts of trouble before being forced back underground when the sun rises on Epiphany morning. Now, it's said that during these 12 days, it's believed that the line between the spiritual and the earthly realm becomes thin, so the Kallikantzaori take advantage of this temporary freedom from their underground existence. They emerge from their dark homes with the aim to disrupt order and sow chaos among humans. They love causing chaos by extinguishing fires, scaring livestock, stealing household items, and playing pranks on unsuspecting people. During this time, people ensure their doors are locked securely, and they keep fires burning brightly. They also take protective measures like burning Yule logs to scare away these creatures from trying to come into their homes or putting them in danger. The reason behind their chaotic behavior can be interpreted in different ways. Some say they just want to undermine the joy and harmony associated with Christmas time, and others think it's an attempt to bring about chaos or even challenge divine authority by disturbing nature's balance. When the sun is about to rise on Epiphany morning, though, they start to get very worried. Some say it's because exposure to sunlight during this time would permanently turn them back into humans, undoing all the evil things they did and making them face judgment for all they've done. So they quickly run back to their underground homes before daybreak until next Christmas. There are variations in how these creatures came into existence or why they were transformed, specifically during Christmas time throughout Greek folklore and mythology. Now, like any creature that has been around for a while, the Kallikantzaroi appearance changes from region to region. Some say they look like small human-like beings with animal parts like goat legs or boar snouts. Others say they look like scary goblins with long arms and sharp claws. Their bodies are normally twisted and deformed because of their transformation from human to monsters. Their limbs are long or weirdly proportioned, and they have hands ending with sharp claws, which they use for all sorts of horrible things. Their skin is rough and dark colored like burnt charcoal or earth. They also have glowing red eyes that pierce through the dark. Normally, Kallikantzaroi are naked, or they wear ripped and dirty rags. In some places, it's believed they can also shapeshift into different forms. Now, I kept mentioning that the Kallikantzaroi would transform back into humans, and that's because in some regions, the Kallikantzaroi too come from humans. It's believed that some people can turn into the Kallikantzaroi if they were born between December 25th and January 6th, when they become adults. Now, to make sure that you didn't turn into a Kallikantzaroi, it's believed that binding a baby in tresses of garlic and straw or singeing the child's toenails can act as a countermeasure. Now, coming from underground, it's no surprise that the Kallikantzaroi are nocturnal, so of course they're not gonna like bright burning things. Like I mentioned before, one common prank they enjoy is putting out fires. So in Greek households, keeping a fire burning throughout the night is a way to protect yourself against the Kallikantzaroi. So because of that, they love to extinguish fire and leaving people vulnerable. They also love scaring livestock. Farmers tend to find their animals spooked or even missing after these goblins start roaming at night. The Kallikantzaroi love spooking herds, which eventually causes economic strain on farmers. They also have a habit of stealing stuff from people's houses. They like taking small objects like keys or shoes to make people confused and inconvenienced in their own homes. And they also love playing pranks on unsuspecting people they find during dark winter nights. Now, these pranks can range from basic tricks like moving objects or making noise, to more creepy stuff like whispering creepy messages and then vanishing. Now, keep in mind that this section is a bit more subject to interpretation, but other than causing pranks and general chaos, the Kallikantzaroi are practically obsessed with chopping down trees. Now, they're always associated with trying to chop down the world tree. They believe that by cutting down the world tree, they can bring about the end of the world. But it's practically pointless because every time they go up to the surface during the 12 days, the tree is all healed up and they start the process all over again. But in some regions during the 12 days, they don't just all of a sudden give up on their tree chopping obsession. Apparently, they'll start chopping down trees all over the place. Old habits die hard, I guess. You would think that once you got an almost 2-week break from literally doing the same thing every day for 353 days, you would take advantage of it, but I guess they just can't get enough of it. And again, this part is more subject to where you hear the legend of the Kallikantzaroi, but apparently, after they're done with their tree chopping, apparently the trees get restored again, probably by the same force as repairing the world tree. But in true Kallikantzaroi fashion, their obsession also causes economic loss for farmers who depend on the trees, destruction on the ecosystem because of soil erosion and destroying the habitats of wildlife, and making it harder for people to find good wood for fuel or building homes. Symbolically, the tree chopping could represent the Kallikantzaroi defiance against nature itself, and it could be seen as their attempt to dismantle the foundations that sustain life. So, to prevent these goblins from cutting down all the good trees, people have developed ways to keep them from getting chopped. One way is hanging bundles of garlic or holly leaf crosses on branches. Another common way is to hang collard greens or other leafy vegetables on branches. Apparently, they're repelled by the strong smell. Another way is by marking the tree trunks with black crosses made of ash or soot, or reciting prayers or enchantments while walking around forests during the 12 Days Awakening. People also bang pots and pans together, play loud music, and light fireworks, since loud noises during nighttime can also scare them away. As mentioned before, when the dawn comes on Epiphany morning, the Kallikantzaori rush back to their underground homes so that they don't turn back into humans. And in true Kallikantzaori fashion, their return underground is as chaotic as can be. They scurry through cracks or vanish down wells to get away from daybreak when Epiphany morning comes. And if sunlight wasn't enough, there are several rituals done just to make sure this pest is all gone. A common one is to bless water on Epiphany through a ceremony called the Great Blessings of Water. Priests will sanctify water and sprinkle it throughout homes, especially on doorways and windows, to purify homes from any leftover evil left behind by the Kallikantzaori or other less than savory spirits. The sprinkling process is done carefully. People move from room to room while reciting prayers and making cross signs with holy water. Another way involves putting basil leaf crosses above doors and windows. Basil in Greek culture represents protection and warding off negative energies. Burning cleansing herbs or incense like sage or myrrh is also a common way of getting rid of them. The smoke is believed to create a barrier that these creatures can't get through. And well, that's not the only way to protect yourself from the Kallikantzaori. Greek households use many different protective measures during the 12 days of their emergence. A common way is to burn a Yule log or a Christmas log throughout the night. The Yule log is normally a large piece of wood that's lit on Christmas Eve and kept burning until Epiphany morning. The warmth and light that comes from it serves as a symbolic barrier that frightens these creatures away. Garlic is also normally used in Greek folklore since it's believed to ward off evil spirits, and so Greek households tend to place cloves of garlic on doorways or hang them on walls since it's believed to cause another invisible barrier against the Kallikantzaori. Another common practice includes hanging crosses made from holly leaves above doors or windows, which work in a similar way as garlic. And of course, keeping doors securely locked and windows tightly shut throughout the night is another way to keep them out. Now, to clarify, this section's a bit more open to interpretation, but I'm going to try to break down the symbolism behind the legend of the Kallikantzaori. One interpretation sees these Kallikantzaori as symbols of chaos and disorder. Their disruptive actions during the 12 Days Awakening supposedly symbolizes potential threats to stability, harmony, and order in life. They serve as a reminder that even during festive times like Christmas, forces are seeking to disturb the balance and highlighting the importance of maintaining virtue and avoiding sinful actions that can lead to chaos. In addition, their emergence from underground into human territories reflects humanity's ongoing struggle against darkness. It reflects our constant battle against negative forces, whether internal conflicts or external influences that seek to disrupt our inner peace and collective harmony. The tree chopping obsession has additional symbolic meaning. By attempting to sever the world tree or cosmic tree, the symbol representing all creation, the Kallikantzaori aim for ultimate destruction, which could reflect humanity's occasional desire to take down what sustains life itself. However, their efforts are consistently fought back against by magical intervention each night, which restores balance and perpetuates cosmic order. This constant pattern shows resistance and confirms the idea that harmony prevails over order in the bigger picture. In addition to that, the fear they have of sunlight adds an extra symbol of redemption and salvation. It represents that those who are consumed by darkness still have the opportunity to turn back into the light. But well, if you haven't turned into an adult yet, and you were born between December 25th and January 6th, maybe cinch your toenails a bit. Who knows? It might just prevent you from becoming an underground goblin obsessed with chopping down a giant tree.
So the next little creature we're going to talk about here are the Chi spirits. The land of origin is China. Other origins, none known. Other names, none known. The element is air. The appearance and temperament. No one has ever seen a Chi spirit, as they are pure energy and have no physical confines. Most time active, all year. The lore. The word Qi in Chinese means energy, and these spirits are part of a vast pantheon of Chinese house spirits whose benevolent energies are thought necessary to smooth running of a household. Like Scottish brownies, the Qi spirits adopt a human home in which to live. The Chinese go to great lengths to see that the beneficial energies Qi spirits emit are not impeded in any way. Furniture is often rearranged to facilitate the free movement of their energy, and mirrors, which act as portals allowing energy to pass through, are placed over any immovable impediments, such as the wall, which is not in a good place. If qi is blocked, no harm will befall anyone, but certain benefits will be diminished. In some rare cases, extreme blockage of qi energy can cause minor disturbances, hauntings, and illness. Where to find them? Unknown. While the Chinese think of this energy as a fairy, qi spirits may be no more than the psychic vibrations which always surround us and are part of everything. How to contact? Invite them into your home in a ritual you design just to bring them in. Magical and ritual help. Undetermined, but their presence may increase physical health and stamina and offer general protection to your home. So I looked to see if I could find anything about qi spirits, and I couldn't find anything. I'm not really certain what McCoy's obsession is with kind of combining everything that, has to do with the house into a household spirit. Don't know what that's about, but again, it's homogenization and it's really annoying. And I do believe that she is getting this concept of qi, which is a Feng Shui practice, which I do believe has its own religious aspects. She's mixing that with qi spirits, quote unquote, which is just the Chinese word for dragon. So I'm going to turn it over to other people here, and we're just going to break it up a little bit and really sort out the differences between the dragon and the Feng Shui aspect.
Hi everyone, welcome to Learn Chinese Now. On this channel we not only teach Chinese language but teach you stories, myths and legends from Chinese history. And if you like the sound of that, do subscribe for new videos from myself and my co-host Jared every week. So looking into Chinese mythical animals, a lot of these first appear in a book called Shanhai Jing, or The Classic of Mountains and Seas. This book dates back to before the Qin dynasty, so before 221 BC, and the author is unknown. The book details 277 different animals, including some that today we would regard as mythical. But who knows? Maybe there really were phoenixes flying around in China 2,000 years ago. Now in the book there are some really weird ones, like this snake with a human head on it. I kid you not, that is actually in the book. So let's get started. Number 1. Dijiang. Now this is the one that in the movie they call Morris, and yes, a Dijiang has no face. The Shanhai Jing records that a Dijiang has wings, 6 legs, and no face, and it also has a yellowish sack-like body. It is a kind of heavenly animal associated with song and dance, and in the movie, it is the one that guides them to the mythical land of Daluo. Number 2. Feng Huang, or Phoenix. And yes, it is often depicted on fire or with a fireball next to it, and it's said to have come from the sun. The Feng Huang in Chinese mythology is said to be the Bainiao Zhiwang, or the king of 100 birds, basically the king of all bird species. The bird that corresponds to the phoenix in the human world is the peacock, i.e. peacocks in the human world are phoenixes in the heavens. And the original shape of the phoenix is said to come from the golden pheasant. Phoenix is seen as a very positive mythical animal. The Shanhai Jing states that its head symbolizes virtue, its wings righteousness, its back etiquette, its breast benevolence, and its belly faith. It sings and dances, and if you see one, it means that all under heaven is peaceful. The phoenix is often paired with the dragon. Here it is on the former national emblem of China that was used from 1912 to 1928. You can also see it with the dragon in the Chinese saying Wang zi cheng long, Wang nu cheng feng, or hope sons become dragons and daughters become phoenixes. This Chinese saying expresses Chinese parents' wish for their sons and daughters to be successful. Number 3. Jiu Wei Hu, or Nine-Tailed Fox. Yeah, you don't really need an explanation as to what this one is. It kind of does what it says on the tin. The Shanhai Jing states, in the mountains of Qingqiu, which is an ancient place in China, there is an animal. Its form is that of a fox, but it has 9 tails. And there it is in Shang-Chi with 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think that's 9. In ancient China, fox spirits were thought to have mystical powers, such as being able to shapeshift into the form of a beautiful woman to seduce men. And there is no more famous of an example of this than the story of Daji, the favorite consort of the last king of the ancient Shang dynasty. She's said to have been a fox spirit who first killed and then impersonated the real Daji. So shapeshifting, you think she's a beautiful woman, but she's not. She could be anything. Now, whether it was actual shapeshifting or just the fox spirit killing Daji's soul and then taking over her body is not clear. But like other monarchs who were under the spell of evil beings, Daji led the last king of the Shang to neglect his duties for the nation and even start indulging in sadistic hobbies, torturing his subjects for amusement. It is commonly believed that Daji, a fox spirit impersonating a human, led to the downfall of the entire Shang dynasty. Anyway, let's get back to the 9-tailed fox. There are Chinese myths that say that once a fox spirit gets to 1,000 years old, it can ascend to heaven and become a celestial fox, and the celestial fox is the 9-tailed fox. But that doesn't change the fact that in Chinese mythology, fox spirits are not benevolent. Think of them as kind of like Loki. They have a connection with the gods in the heavens, but they are kind of like tricksters, and they can cause chaos and death in the human world. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Number 4, Qilin, or Chinese unicorn. It has a body like a horse, scales like a dragon, and usually 2 horns. Ones in Shang-Chi are turquoise, but they can actually be a variety of different colors, and they are often depicted as golden. The Qilin can also be referred to as just Lin, and it was first mentioned in the poem The Feet of the Lin, which was included in the Shi Jing, a book compiling poems from the 11th to 7th century BC. The Spring and Autumn Annals, or Chunqiu Jing, that cover a period from 722 to 481 BC, record that in the spring of the 14th year of Duke Ai of Lu, they went hunting in the west and caught a Qilin. It seems sometime after that the Qilin stopped appearing in the human world and became a creature of legend. Maybe they were still sometimes sighted by people because they have been regularly depicted in paintings, on pieces of china, and in statues throughout Chinese history. And now many Chinese and Asian brands also use the Qilin in their branding, like Kirin beer from Japan, for example. Kirin is the Japanese pronunciation of Qilin, and you can see a golden Qilin in the middle of their logo. And any Chinese restaurant that calls itself the Golden Unicorn, and yeah, there's like 5,000 of these restaurants across the world, the animal that they're actually referring to is the Qilin. You can see on this one in New Jersey, it says Jinlin on the sign. And one of my favorite dim sum restaurants in New York's Chinatown is called Qilin Jingge, literally Unicorn Golden Pavilion, but in English they just translate it to Golden Unicorn. According to legend, Qilin appear when there is a benevolent ruler. For example, the first Qilin appeared in the Garden of the Yellow Emperor in the year 2697 BC. Qilin are also known to appear with the arrival of a great sage. In another example, a Qilin appeared to Confucius's pregnant mother before she gave birth in the 6th century BC. In the Ming Dynasty, when Chinese explorers brought a giraffe back from Africa, they presented it to the Yongle Emperor as a Qilin. The emperor immediately remarked that this was no Qilin and he was not a sage, because I guess he thought they were trying to flatter him, saying he was a great sage. Oh, look, a Qilin appeared. But actually in Japanese, a giraffe is still called Qilin, same characters, although it's pronounced Kirin in Japanese. Number 5, Suanni. This is the lion-like creature that we see walking around on the grass as they get to the village in the mystical realm. Now, since China does not have any indigenous lions of its own, any creature in Chinese mythology that looked like a lion was referred to as a suanni, but later on, when Chinese people encountered actual lions along the Silk Road and in India, they discovered that they looked pretty similar to the suanni, and they adopted the term shizi, or just shi, which is believed to be a phonetic translation of the Persian word for lion, which is pronounced se. Actually, even the word suanni is thought to have come from a phonetic translation of an ancient Indian word for lions. And Chinese people did quite widely know of lions in the Han Dynasty, and probably knew of them to some extent even earlier. There's one historical record, for example, of an envoy from a certain Central Asian country presenting a lion as a gift to the Han court in the year 87 AD. There is also a Buddhist association with lions, since at the time many Buddhist monks would have traveled through Central Asia to India to study Buddhism, and they would have seen lions. The Buddhist monks and priests came back to China with stories about the prowess and might of the lion, and it became an animal with a mystical aura surrounding it. And it seems suanni not only refers to lions in the human world, but lion-like creatures in the heavens too. During the Han Dynasty, the Han court adopted the lion as protectionist iconography. Chinese people depicted lions in statues guarding the entrance to temples, watching over the incense burner, and also at the gates to imperial palaces. These stone lion statues, or shi, are always in pairs, with the male depicted resting its paw on a bull, and the female with a lion cub under its paw. During the Ming Dynasty, there was the theory of the 9 sons of the dragon, or Longsheng Jiuzi, of which the lion was one of them. But I know you guys now want to hear about the dragon itself. So, without further ado, number 6, the Chinese dragon, or Long. If there is one single mythical creature that is most associated with Chinese culture, it is the Chinese dragon, which is pronounced Long. Now, this is not the same creature as the fire-breathing Western dragon that we see in stories like The Hobbit or King Arthur. That is more like a flying evil dinosaur that breathes fire. The Chinese dragon is actually more associated with water. Just like the dragon in Shang-Chi, it manipulates water to fight the evil beast. The classic of dragons, or Longjing, that was written in the Qing dynasty, it says that dragons are the leaders of all water-based creatures, and that it is a divine animal and it controls the rain. It comes in both good and evil varieties, but in general, dragons are seen as mostly positive. They are known as rulers of the seas and controllers of the weather. The book goes on to describe a dragon's appearance, with a body like a snake, scales like a fish, a head like a camel, and eyes like a ghost. There are also different colors of dragons and different types of dragons that do different things. And dragons have a really long history in China. There are stone carvings of dragons that have been found that date back to as early as 6,000 years BC. Here is a carving of a dragon from the Zhou dynasty. The Shanghai Jing actually refers to ancient people and gods riding dragons as a mode of transportation, just like Shang-Chi. Dragons have now also become a symbol of authority. They became associated with the imperial family during the Han Dynasty, when the founder of the dynasty, Liu Bang, stated that when his mother gave birth to him, she dreamed of a dragon. During the Tang Dynasty, emperors wore yellow clothes embroidered with a dragon motif, and Chinese people even refer to themselves as Long de Chuanren, or descendants of the dragon. And thus you see the dragon on the first ever flag of China that was used during the Qing dynasty, when all the other Western countries kind of bullied China into coming up with a flag, because they all had flags. And just in case you thought that this was all fake, there have been numerous dragon sightings, some of them caught on camera, and in 2017, villagers from a place called Jiangjiakou in China actually found a 60-foot long skeleton in a field that resembled a dragon. It baffled researchers, and the History Channel even made a documentary about it. Now, many of these stories about dragons and other mythological animals throughout history were written down as historical fact. It's your choice whether you think that there are really dragons, or people rode dragons, or there are Chinese unicorns, or whatever. But at a minimum, you can take these stories as interesting myths.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is on one of my absolute favorite topics. It's about Feng Shui for your home. I'm pretty sure you've heard Feng Shui thrown around there anytime it comes to like your energy or the universe or Qi, but I want to break down the basics of what Feng Shui actually is. Feng Shui is an ancient science that dates back over 3,500 years. Feng Shui has its roots in the Chinese way of seeing the universe. Basically, the universe is categorized into 5 basic elements. Those elements are fire, earth, wood, water, and metal. And each of these elements attract either positive or negative energy. This energy is called Qi, and Qi basically brings good fortune to those who are surrounded by it. The literal translation of Feng Shui is wind and water. Feng is wind plus Shui is water. So when you combine these two elements, they create really magical harmony and balance, which you can then bring into your home. So in this video, I'll be breaking down basic principles of Feng Shui and how you can use it to energize the happiness and health in your home. So how Feng Shui helps your energy is you want to basically use the balance of the 5 elements in any given space. And the more you energize a specific element for a specific area in your home, it's going to create more Qi, more harmony, bring you more health and more happiness. Practicing really good Feng Shui principles could also increase your energy level and help you stay healthy. Have you guys ever noticed that every time your home is like cluttered or something feels completely off? That's basically how your energy is reacting to the energy that's within your home. Really great interior design and space planning actually follows basic principles of Feng Shui, sometimes without you even realizing it. The way you position your sofa in relation to your television, the way you position your head in your bedroom also affects your health in so many ways you can't even explain. So I'll be talking about the best areas to Feng Shui your home and where it's the most useful. Let's start with the front door. All of the energy and the good auspicious luck you have starts at the front door. This is where all of the great energy starts and how it flows throughout the rest of your home. So the first thing you have to do is eliminate all that clutter. This isn't just for that front entry, but really you need to eliminate clutter in the entire home. What do I mean by clearing clutter? That basically means there's not a gang load of shoes on the floor, there's no keys and wallets and coins and everything that's kind of spilling out on, you know, like a little console by your entry. You want to make sure that there's a place for everything. Maybe a shoe organizer to put all of your shoes in, a tray or a valet or a little box so that you could hide your keys, your wallets, and your coins. You want to make sure that everything is really tidy and really beautiful. Bonus points if you could place like a really beautiful plant there. Having a living plant at the entry of your home will also be a great way to help Qi come in and flow out through the rest of the space. Before we get into the rest of the video, I just want to let you guys know that I am not an expert by any means on Feng Shui. I've just been practicing Feng Shui for such a long time, I think ever since I was a little girl. Because my mother, we're Buddhist by faith, okay? So I think this is a very like superstitious kind of Buddhist quality. She has always had Feng Shui masters, fortune tellers, and monks come to our home to bless the home with like really positive energy. So if you have your own home or you're looking for a new home, one of the key things that I absolutely have to tell you about a front entry door in Feng Shui is that once you open the door, you want to make sure that there is not a direct line of sight to a back door. That basically just means the minute the Qi enters your front door, it has like a clear pathway to your back door, and then all of your energy and good luck is going to go right out the window or right out the door. Well, let's say you're already living in a home where the front door sees the back door. There are so many Feng Shui elements that you can place there so that the Qi has room to maneuver around and be able to kind of land in the rest of the house. One of the ways that you can help Qi flow is to place something in its way. For instance, a plant, a sofa, a chair, maybe even an accent table with a really pretty floral arrangement above it. I mean, I don't want to get too much into detail, but basically as long as you have something there blocking a Qi's pathway, if it has direct access, it'll be able to linger longer into your home. Moving on to the bathrooms. A bathroom is where good energy goes to die. I mean, I know that it's really common for us to like spruce up our bathroom, make it look really pretty, but in Feng Shui, bathrooms are like really horrible energy. because clearly it's where, you know, you deposit waste and it's like dirty, you're cleaning yourself, so it's like you're cleaning all the bad energy off of you for the day, and this is where it just kind of dies in the bathroom. So instead of trying to re-energize a bathroom, two of the things that you absolutely have to do is number one, always put your toilet seat down after every use. Like literally that toilet seat has to go down so all of that energy and waste doesn't come back up. The second thing you have to do is close your bathroom door. Let's talk about Feng Shui for the living room. The living room is one of the most important corners of the home because it really symbolizes a place for all of the family to gather and get together. There are a couple of basic guidelines for good living room arrangements in Feng Shui. Number one, you want to bring as much natural light into the space as possible. Always have your drapery open to bring in all of that great natural light and good energy. Opening the windows also allows the stale energy that stagnates in the living room to kind of dispel and then the new energy to come in. I know that all living rooms are not equal. Sometimes you have like odd corners, weird angles, like really off shapes. You're trying to create a really rectangular or a really square furniture layout, so everything kind of looks squared off. That means creating conversation areas. You can do this by placing sofas and chairs to face each other, or creating like groups of seating so that the people that are using the living room space kind of have direct eye contact. You also want to make the coffee table the focal point of that conversational seating area so that it becomes a symbol of family gatherings and togetherness. Let's talk about Feng Shui in the kitchen. One of the first things I did when I moved into this house is I demolished the entire kitchen. Each Feng Shui principle really has directional elements. I don't want to get too caught up into that, unless you guys want me to detail it in a later video. So the Feng Shui element of water is typically relegated to the north side, and fire is on the south side. When I bought the home, all of the elements were like totally off. The sink, which symbolizes water, was like in the south location. The stove, which symbolizes fire, was in like the north location. So I demoed everything and made sure that all of the elements were completely balanced without canceling each other out. Of course, I know you guys aren't going to do a complete kitchen overhaul, so here are some really basic principles for you to follow when it comes to Feng Shui in the kitchen. You absolutely need to have really great lighting in the kitchen because that brings in all the great chi. If you don't have natural lighting or a skylight, I would put in like really great overhead recess lights or an overhead pendant that brightens up the entire area. You want to store knives out of sight, like literally put them in a drawer. Get rid of those butcher blocks where you have those knives in clear sight. Those are like poison arrows waiting to stab you. I know I don't want to get that dramatic, but really, Feng Shui is all about symbolism, and knives just represent discomfort. You want to hide all of your trash cans. Try to put them in a cabinet because trash cans equal clutter, and we are trying to get rid of all that clutter, guys. The best way to do this is probably to have a trash can in a cabinet under your sink, because clearly your sink is where you're throwing all of your trash and debris. You can just open up the cabinet, pull out your trash can, and throw all the trash in there. A decorative item that you can use on the countertops or the island is a bowl of fruit. Fruit symbolizes abundance and health and wealth. You just want to make sure that you replace the fruit so that it doesn't rot, and then obviously if that was the case, you're kind of bringing more of that bad energy in. So really beautiful, vibrant, ripe fruit is a plus, and like rotting fruit is like an absolute no-no. So let's move on to the office. The first rule, you guessed it, remove all that clutter. Declutter, remove all of that loose paper on your desk. A really great way to organize all of that loose paper is simply with a tray. You can leave a tray on your desk and then file all of your loose papers in folders and then just simply leave it on your desk that way. Visually, it looks as though it's completely tidy, but of course you have all of your loose paper within arm's reach. The second thing that you could do is to hide all of those unsightly cords. Cords are like my number one pet peeve. Like I hate seeing cords hanging out underneath the TV. Really, you can just install it like in the walls and hide it in the walls somewhere. But when it comes to your office, that's not always easy to do. Cords represent competing like electromagnetic energy. That's just way too much energy happening in your home office. The office should be a place where you're like sitting down, zoned in, completely productive. Now, if you have all these cords all over the place, it just like messes with that energy field. So my advice is to, number one, hide the cords. Maybe you can hide it behind like your desk or your console. Or number two, you could get a Velcro strip or like a cable tie and kind of bunch all your cords together. So at least they're tidy and they don't look as messy. The most important tip that you absolutely have to know in your office is that your desk does not face the wall. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen this in like my friends' homes, even client homes. They always have their desk positioned so they're like facing the wall, which is an absolute no-no. You want to make sure that your desk and where you're sitting, where your head chair is, you have a direct visual eye line to your entry door. That means when someone opens the door, you visually see them. This basically symbolizes that you don't want someone to sneak up on you. You are the master of your domain, so you should have full control of who comes in and who comes out. Lastly, let's talk about Feng Shui for the bedroom. One of the principles that Feng Shui absolutely loves and adheres to is symmetry. The Qi energy has a really great place to flow if everything kind of looks symmetrical in the bedroom, which means you have a bed in the center and two coordinating nightstands on the side. The nightstands don't need to be identical, they just need to feel equal in weight so that their symmetry is balanced and the Qi has a really great place to flow. One of the questions that I get asked the most is, where do I place the headboard in a bedroom? Using that same principle in the office where you want people sneaking up on you, you want to make sure that when you're lying in bed, even if you're upright or lying in bed, you have a direct visible eye line to the entry door. Someone opens the door and you can see them right away, so no one can sneak up on you. You guys understand that? So you don't want your head to the side and your entry door over here. You absolutely don't want your bed facing the back of the entry door, because then you can't see who's coming in. So the area where you should position your head is facing the entry door. Another Feng Shui tip for the bedroom is mirrors. Mirrors are a really great way to help the energy flow, especially if they reflect something really beautiful. You can have mirrors in the bedroom, but you can't have them facing the bed. So if the mirror was on a wall and the wall wasn't facing the bed, that's great. Bonus points if it's reflecting a really beautiful window, you're getting all of that great natural light and you can see like the landscape, your trees, or like a really great view outside. What you don't want is to have that mirror reflecting your bed, because that just means that you're inviting like a stranger into your bedroom. And it's an absolute no-no if you're coupled up or you're married. It almost symbolizes that someone's cheating or, or having an affair, which, I mean, who wants that, right? So when decorating for the bedroom, you want to use a lot of really natural, organic elements. If you have the opportunity to do either a live plant or an artificial plant, you absolutely want to use the living live plant. If you don't have a green thumb and you love the look of artificial plants, definitely choose something of like a higher quality silk, a higher quality synthetic fiber, something that really mimics the natural look the most, because that synthetic look is really just going to bring that energy down. Also, if you use any artificial plants inside the home, make sure you dust it often. Dust and debris could collect on, silk leaves so easily. I see that all the time. So it's really easy for you to just kind of get like a wet cloth or maybe even like a baby wipe and then wipe all that dust off, because dust equals bad chi, and nobody wants bad chi in their lives. So to recap, mirrors in the bedroom are an absolute no-no when they reflect the bed. For kitchen designs and layout, never place the sink and the stove directly across from each other. This is especially true for renovators or remodelers. If you guys are building a brand new kitchen, never place water and fire directly across from each other, because they'll cancel all that good harmony and balance out. Plants in the living room allow really great energy to flow into the space. You want to make sure that you maintain them, keep them watered, keep them alive, because if they start dying, your luck will too. Desks should never ever face walls. You want to have a direct line of sight to the entry door so guests don't surprise you. You always want to place your headboard on a protected wall in your bedroom. That means a wall without windows and a wall that has direct eye line to the entry door. You want to balance out that bedroom with coordinating nightstands on either side of your bed. Feng Shui in the home basically just means the spatial arrangement and the orientation of your furniture for the home. The way you place furniture and objects in your home helps that flow of energy and attracts that really good chi. The more you can help chi flow through your home, the more you can help that energy level. It'll raise your frequency, balance you out, and have overall the most favorable effects on your well-being.
So the next creature that we are going to discuss here is the Chin Kobakama. And according to McCoy, their land of origin is Japan. Other origins are possibly China. Other names, none known. Their element is earth. Appearance and temperament. Elven-like in appearance, the Chinchin Kobakama is either male or female, and appears to be elderly but amazingly spry. They are generally friendly towards humans, but can be a nuisance. Most time active, all year during daylight hours. The lore. The Chinchin Kobakama is similar to the house brownie known to Westerners, but these fairies are said to be specifically floor and rug fairies. They move into human homes and will bless and protect them as long as they are kept clean. They have been known to tease sloppy children and chase after sloppy housekeepers. Where to find them? Unknown. How to contact. Keep your home clean and set out food for them. Invoke them with a simple ritual, but make sure you really want them in your home. If not, visit them on the inner planes. Magical and ritual help. Possibly home blessings. Protection.
Japanese Fairy Tale Series, number 25, Chinchin Kobakama, rendered into English by Lafcadio Hearn. The floor of a Japanese room is covered with beautiful, thick, soft mats of woven reeds. They fit very closely together, so that you can just slip a knife blade between them. They are changed once every year and are kept very clean. The Japanese never wear shoes in the house and do not use chairs or furniture such as English people use. They sit, sleep, eat, and sometimes even write upon the floor, so the mats must be kept very clean indeed. And Japanese children are taught, just as soon as they can speak, never to soil or dirty the mats. You ask me whether all Japanese children are as good as that? Well, no, there are a very few naughty ones. And what happens to the mats in the houses of these naughty children? Nothing very bad, because there are fairies who take care of the mats. These fairies tease and frighten children who dirty or spoil the mats. At least, they used to tease and frighten such mischievous children. I am not quite sure whether these little fairies still live in Japan, because the new railways and the telegraph poles have frightened a great many fairies away. But there is a little story about them. Once there was a little girl who was very pretty, but also very lazy. Her parents were rich and had a great many servants, and these servants were very fond of the little girl, and did everything for her which she ought to have been able to do for herself. Perhaps this was what made her so lazy. When she grew up into a beautiful woman, she still remained lazy, but as the servants always dressed and undressed her, and arranged her hair, she looked very charming, and nobody thought about her faults. At last she was married to a brave warrior, and went away with him to live in another house where there were but few servants. She was sorry not to have as many servants as she had at home, because she was obliged to do several things for herself, which other folks had always done for her. It was such trouble to her to dress herself, to take care of her own clothes, and keep herself looking neat and pretty to please her husband. But as he was a warrior, and often had to be far away from home with the army, she could sometimes be just as lazy as she wished. Her husband's parents were very old and good-natured, and never scolded her. Well, one night while her husband was away with the army, she was awakened by queer little noises in her room. By the light of a big paper lantern she could see very well, and she saw strange things. What? Hundreds of little men, dressed just like Japanese warriors, but only about 1 inch high, were dancing all around her pillow. They wore the same kind of dress her husband wore on holidays. Kamishimo, a long robe with square shoulders, and their hair was tied up in knots, and each wore 2 tiny swords. They all looked at her as they danced and laughed, and they all sang the same song over and over again. Chin Chin Kobakama Yomofuke Soro Oshizumare Himi Gimi Yatonton, which meant, "We are the Chin Chin Kobakama. The hour is late. Sleep, honorable, noble darling." The words seem very polite, but she soon saw that the little men were only making cruel fun of her. They also made ugly faces at her. She tried to catch some of them, but they jumped about so quickly that she could not. Then she tried to drive them away, but they would not go, and they never stopped singing Chin Chin Kobakama and laughing at her. Then she knew they were little fairies and became so frightened that she could not even cry out. They danced around her until morning. Then they all vanished suddenly. She was ashamed to tell anybody what had happened, because, as she was the wife of a warrior, she did not wish anybody to know how frightened she had been. Next night, again the little men came and danced, and they came also the night after that, and every night, always at the same hour, which the old Japanese used to call the hour of the ox, that is, about 2 o'clock in the morning by our time. At last she became very sick, through want of sleep and through fright, but the little men would not leave her alone. When her husband came back home, he was very sorry to find her sick in bed. At first, she was afraid to tell him what had made her ill, for fear that he would laugh at her. But he was so kind and coaxed her so gently that after a while she told him what happened every night. He did not laugh at her at all, but looked very serious for a time. Then he asked, "At what time do they come?" She answered, "Always at the same hour, the hour of the ox." "Very well," said her husband. "Tonight I shall hide and watch for them. Do not be frightened." So that night the warrior hid himself in a closet in the sleeping room and kept watch through a chink between the sliding doors. He waited and watched until the hour of the ox. Then all at once the little men came up through the mats and began their dance and their song. Chin Chin Kobakama Yomofuke Soro. They looked so queer and danced in such a funny way that the warrior could scarcely keep from laughing. But he saw his young wife's frightened face, and then, remembering that nearly all Japanese ghosts and goblins are afraid of a sword, he drew his blade and rushed out of the closet and struck at the little dancers. Immediately they all turned into, what do you think? Toothpicks! There were no more little warriors, only a lot of old toothpicks scattered over the mats. The young wife had been too lazy to put her toothpicks away properly, and every day, after having used a new toothpick, she would stick it down between the mats on the floor to get rid of it. So the little fairies who take care of the floor mats became angry with her and tormented her. Her husband scolded her, and she was so ashamed that she did not know what to do. A servant was called, and the toothpicks were taken away and burned. After that, the little men never came back again. The end of the first story. There is also a story told about a lazy little girl who used to eat plums and afterward hide the plum stones between the floor mats. For a long time, she was able to do this without being found out, but at last the fairies got angry and punished her. For every night, tiny, tiny women, all wearing bright red robes with very long sleeves, rose up from the floor at the same hour and danced and made faces at her and prevented her from sleeping. Her mother one night sat up to watch and saw them and struck at them, and they all turned into plum stones. So the naughtiness of that little girl was found out. After that, she became a very good girl indeed. The end.
And so the next creature we're going to be talking about here is a pair of creatures. Churn, Milkpeg, and Melch. So, according to McCoy, their land of origin is England. Other origins, none known. Other names are Acorn, Woman, and Melch. Their element is earth. Appearance and temperament. These are small dwarf fairies. Peg is woman and Dick a man. They wear the peasant clothing of 15th century England, and their nature is very capricious. Most time active, spring through autumn. The lore. These fairies, 2 of a kind, love nuts and all sorts, and will guard them by giving cramps and bloat to those who take the fruit from the tree or plant they are watching over at any particular time. Fortunately for us, they move around quite a bit and are never in one place for very long. If you go to pick a nut or nut fruit and feel a decided pinch, take it as a warning that these plants are being watched over. They also guard orchards and can terrify fruit thieves. Though Peg and Dick are both quite lazy themselves, they despise laziness in humans and are known to give a quick pinch to startle people out of their daydreams, or chase them to get their sluggish blood moving. But since both Peg and Dick are somewhat arthritic, humans can easily outdistance them. One explanation of the origin of these two fairies ties in with the folklore, which says that nuts and certain fruits enhance human fertility. So prized were they that these two fairies were sent to protect them. In this guise, they may actually be devalued fertility deities associated with Beltane. The fact that milk, fruit, and nuts, foods associated with the fertility sabbath of Beltane, are the only foods in their diet, further establishes this link. Where to find them? In the English countryside. How to contact? Make an invitation to your circle. Offer nuts and milk as an inducement if you really want them around. So, a few things here. I will be turning it over to Scary Fairy to get more in depth about these particular creatures, because from what I remember from my research, I do believe that they are a little bit more on the malevolent side, and also the other names is not Acorn Lady or Acorn Woman, as McCoy has said here, but rather acorns are definitely a symbol in, the British countryside and things like that associated with fairies, that particular tree. However, the name Acorn Woman is actually associated with a folkloric woman from the Takilma tribe. But I wasn't really able to find a lot of information on that particular mythology from that particular tribe, just some reference material for it. But at the same time, it could be a particular story that is told only within the tribe itself, and is kept very safeguarded, which of course is completely understandable considering the circumstances. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over now.
Every forest, no matter how ancient and gnarled, gives birth to the new. Saplings rise out of the earth, buds blossom on branches, fledgling birds, fox pups, and baby squirrels open their eyes for the first time. There is a pair of peculiar old fairies known as Melch and Churn Peg, who watch over all in the forest that is young and new. The word Melch or Melch is an old dialect word for soft, tender, or unripe, whereas churn milk is a reference to churn milk nuts, that is, nuts in their unripe or pulpy stage. As their names suggest, Melch and Churn Peg are the protectors of all that is unripe and unready under the forest boughs. Melch has been described as a short man about the size of a 10 or 11-year-old boy, dressed in simple clothing that is covered in moss with a cap of red squirrel fur. His age is said to be impossible to gauge, and from him exudes the scent of tree resin and sap. Melch haunts the greenwoods of England, particularly those of Yorkshire. In the past, when children went out to pick nuts in the hazel groves, adults in the area would warn them, "Melch will catch thee, lad," if any of them dared to disturb the unripe nuts this forest fairy has claimed as his own. It was once said that children who had gone missing in the greenwoods were likely to have been taken by Melch. But why would Melch target children, you might ask, when his task seems to be to defend the young? Some have theorized that revenge drives this woodland fairy, a kind of tit-for-tat with humanity. According to lore, Melch was once a good-natured fairy who brought gifts to the local people and helped them with their planting. But he grew angry when humans cut down the young trees in his charge. While humans prize the life of a child far above that of a young tree, the fairies make other calculations. Churn is related in some way to Melch. She may be his wife, his sister, his associate, or himself in a shapeshifted disguise. She has been described as a wizened old woman, short, squat, and completely mad. She sits in groves of nut trees, a wooden pipe hanging from her lips, her wrinkled skin, wild hair, and mossy attire camouflaging her amidst the bark and the leaves. But when a child comes along and picks an unripe nut, she leaps to life, shouting these 2 lines: "Smoke, smoke, a wooden pipe, getting nuts before they're ripe." Then she attacks. It is said that Churn will drag any child she captures deep into the woods, and then into the clutches of Melch. It is unknown what these 2 do to the children they capture, whether they take them away to the fairy world and into a life of servitude and dread, or to some other terrible fate. Whatever the case, it's best to avoid these hedgerow horribles by leaving the young things of the forest in peace.
So the next little creature we're going to talk about here are the Clurichauns. So according to McCoy, their land of origin is Ireland. Other origins: a similar fairy known as a Monsilino is native to Italy. Other names: his nibs, which I did make a note about that one. That's actually just British slang for a haughty person, so no. Anyway, the element is earth. Appearance and temperament. The Cluricaun is a solitary fairy who resembles his cousin the leprechaun, and no sightings of females have ever been recorded. He is the self-appointed guardian of a wine cellar, one which he chooses in his own time, and then moves in and makes himself at home. The Cluricaun is almost always drunk, but is impeccably well-groomed and well-dressed. Generally, he has a cheerful disposition, but is rather aloof even while intoxicated. Like many fairies, the Cluricaun wears a red hat, which may be made of plants. Most time active, all year. The lore. A Cluricaun in your cellar will prevent casks from leaking and wines from going bad, and he will chase away all those who come to take a drink uninvited by the master of the house. Occasionally he can be heard singing Irish folk songs in the wine cellars. If you ignore or mistreat him, he will wreak havoc on your cellars and on your home, and he will most definitely spoil your wine stock. Once you have chased away your Cluricaun by insensitivity or lack of hospitality, no other will ever come to take his place. Where to find them? If you wish to attract a Cluricaun to your cellars, leave a bit of wine out for him or design a ritual to invite him in. You don't have to have an elaborate wine stock, but you must have a collection in your basement in order for him to be interested in staying there and adopting your home as his. If you already have a Cluricaun, know that he is there to stay. How to contact? See above. Magical and ritual help. Aids in home protection against thieves and vandals. Guards the wine cellar. So once again, we have some issues here. So this other little fairy that she had spoken of here, the Monsilio, is spelled Monsiello. Now, that is the absolute incorrect spelling of the creature I believe McCoy was talking about, when in actuality it is spelled Monsiello. So that's something to be aware of in this section. And the second thing to keep in mind, once again, is that Irish folk do not generally invite fairies into their living spaces because of the havoc that they wreak. So, they generally like to keep them out. But I'm going to turn it over to someone else, and they are going to explain this farther in depth.
The Cluricaun is an Irish fairy from Munster, pretty much unknown in the north of the country and akin to the leprechaun. He is a menace, raiding wine cellars, taking sheep and dogs to ride throughout the night. He is also a shoemaker, usually creating shoes made of metal. The sound of his hammer can often be heard, tap tap tapping, as he practices his craft. He is a wizened little old fellow, dressed in green with huge buttons and buckles. He is also fond of wearing huge tricorn hats. Often he can be heard whistling as he works. However, should he be sighted by a human, he will disappear in a flash. The Cluricaun always knows where buried treasure is, and should a human keep watch to see where the fairy creature has hidden his stash and left a distinctive broken twig, or maybe tied a little cloth, once the human has left, the Cluricaun will multiply these signs over and over and over all around the area, so the human has no chance of stealing the Cluricaun's loot. The Cluricaun always carries a little money pouch, and in this bag he keeps his lucky shilling. Once spent, this coin always returns to his purse. A crafty fellow, he also has a duplicate bag with a false copper coin, and should anyone try to rob him, it will be this purse that the thief makes off with. He has a deep love of whiskey and tobacco. Indeed, many tiny clay pipes and pieces of pipes have been found where it is known that the Clurichauns frequent. Usually this is fairy mounds or nearby fairy trees. The Cluricaun also knows the secret of brewing heather wine also. He's a clever fellow indeed.
I hope you enjoyed this time's telling of tales. Take care, brightest of blessings, and remember, don't play with the fairy folk, or you may end up in one of my folk tales yourself.
So the next creature we're going to be talking about here is the Coblyn. So this is another homogenization that is going on here in McCoy's book, because she has both Coblyn and Knockers as the same entity. And while they do similar things, they are in two separate parts of the country. One is in Wales and one is in Cornwall. We're going to talk about the Coblyn in this video, and then we will be discussing Knockers in a much later episode.
The Coblynau of Bodfari, underground spirits of Wales. Coblynau were believed to be a species of fairy, a mere 1.5 foot in height. They lived within rocks and crevices, but their homes were invisible to mortal eyes. Underground was their domain, and they were said to love metal above all else. Mines, especially metal mines, were irresistible to them. Coblynau would make noises and knocks to announce their presence to the miners, and also to alert them to the presence of seams of metal and minerals. Sometimes they would tap to warn of looming danger. These ugly and frequently naughty creatures would steal candles and hide clothes and pickaxes. They could be malevolent and threaten miners during their hard and dangerous work. It was believed that when a mine accident was about to occur, they would imitate the sounds of miners at work. And whenever a miner's death was imminent, they would knock 3 times upon the mine wall.
So the next creature we are going to discuss here are called the Korrigans. And this is another one that McCoy has spelled incorrectly. She spelled it Corrigans. And actually, the rest of it is spelled similarly, but it starts with a K, not a C. So according to McCoy, the land of origin is Brittany. Other origins are Cornwall. Other names, and here she gives the actual correct spelling of the Korrigans. The element is water. Appearance and temperament. This changeable fairy came to Cornwall from Britain, France, where she was still well known. Korrigans appear as blonde females by night and repulsive hags by day. Most time active, all year. The lore. The Korrigan may be a devalued version of the Celtic triple goddess known as the Morrigan, who is 3 crone goddesses in one, or she may be a myth which underscores the devaluation of women, especially elderly women. Men who see her by night are never able to forget her, and some pine away for want of her. Stories exist concerning men who marry a Korrigan only to discover in the morning the true nature of their wives. Other legends state that if a man genuinely loves her in her night form and is open-minded enough to continue loving her in the morning, that she will become human and remain beautiful both night and day. Where to find them? Probably in woodlands near running water. How to contact? Unknown. So, if my memory serves me correctly for this one, this also has an air of homogenization, but also I do think it's kind of funny that McCoy would, say in one breath that this whole concept of this creature is strictly to devalue women, and then in the next just be very disparaging against old women. The 90s, what can I tell you?
The Enigmatic Korrigans, spirits of the shadows. In the mist-laden hills of Brittany, where the earth seems to pulse with ancient magic and the winds carry whispers of forgotten tales, dwells the Korrigans, ethereal beings cloaked in mystery and danger. These enchantresses, often depicted as small, beautiful women with flowing hair, are both alluring and terrifying, embodying the duality of nature itself. The Korrigans dance between the realms of light and darkness, captivating the hearts of men while harboring the potential for vengeance that chills the soul. The legends speak of moonlit nights when the Korrigans emerge from the depths of the earth, drawn to the surface by the haunting melodies of flutes and harps played by unwitting mortals. Under the silver glow of the moon, they twirl and sway, their laughter echoing like bells, beckoning those brave enough to join their ethereal revelry. Yet, those who succumb to the allure of their dance often find themselves ensnared in a web of enchantment, trapped in a world where time flows differently and reality blurs. But this is no mere frolic. The Korrigans are guardians of the sacred groves and hidden springs, protectors of nature's bounty. Their beauty masks a ferocious spirit. Should any dare to desecrate their sacred lands or disrespect their ancient customs, they unleash a wrath that can turn even the bravest of men into quivering shadows. Tales of farmers who have ventured into the enchanted woods, only to be cursed with barren fields or livestock that withers under their gaze, abound in the region. The Korrigans are known to weave dark spells, lacing the very soil with despair for those who offend them. As the years turned into centuries, tales of the Korrigans spread far and wide, warning travelers to tread carefully near their lands. Those who dared to enter their realm seeking adventure often returned with wild eyes, whispering of dancing lights and voices that lured them deeper into the woods, where they vanished without a trace. The Korrigans continued to dance, their laughter haunting the nights, a reminder of the thin veil that separates the human world from the dark, untamed forces of nature. For the Korrigans, beauty is a mask for the ferocity that lies beneath. They embody the wild spirit of the land, both nurturing and destructive, alluring and terrifying. To engage with them is to dance on the precipice of danger, where the price of ambition may very well be one's very soul.
And the last creature that we are going to be talking about for this episode is the Cucuy. Now, once again, McCoy has spelled it incorrectly. She spelled it C-U-C-U-I. It's C-U-C-U-Y, and it's El Cucuy. From my research, this is what I have discovered. So, according to McCoy, the land of origin is northern Mexico. Other origins: the Cucuy is known in the Hispanic countries of southwestern North America. Other names: none known. The element is earth. Appearance and temperament: El Cucuy has almost become a generic term for monster among Mexicans and American Hispanics. If the Cucuy had a characteristic look, it has long been lost to us. He is not friendly, nor is he considered safe to be around. Most time active, all year. The lore: whoever or whatever the Cucuy originally was, over time he has taken on a popular image similar to that of a staring zombie or ghoul. He apparently cannot think in any sense that we understand the term, and he seems to be motivated only by some primal instinct. He is best described as a large, drooling monster who is out to get and hurt anyone he can get his hands on. Fortunately, he is rarely seen. Where to find them? Unknown. How to contact? Contact not advised. So, as we have just sort of been discussing throughout this entire thing, it's always sort of weird when we have, a white lady from the West who is talking about other people's folklore, and especially in this case, Hispanic folklore. So I'm going to turn it over to somebody else, and they are going to give a much better account of El Cucuy.
Many Hispanic families will often warn their children, "Behave, or El Cucuy will come and take you away." Used to discipline children who disobey their parents, El Cucuy is the Hispanic form of the boogeyman. In Mexico and the southern west United States, this monster is often referred to as El Cucuy, although El Cuco and El Chamuco, the devil, are also used. It is thought the name El Cucuy comes from the sound that the creature makes. The sound is not only the frightening noise that lets children know that El Cucuy is near, but is also a signal of danger and that they should be wary. El Cucuy has many different shapes and forms. Originating in Portugal, El Cucuy was known as a coco, and many depicted it as a ghost with a pumpkin head. While the now Cucuy, having no gender, in Brazilian folklore, this creature can appear as Cuca, the female human alligator hybrid. The physical appearance of El Cucuy is much like the boogeyman, though many people have their own versions of him. El Cucuy can shapeshift into various animals to lure children into a false sense of security. It can also become a horrible, hairy monster that appears from a mysterious shadow on the wall. It can become thin or small in order to hide under beds, in closets, or even behind curtains. Many claim that it has glowing red eyes and is usually seen as the size of an imp. The more widely accepted version is that of a small, hideous, hairy creature with glowing red eyes, big bat-like ears, and a mouth filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth. According to legend, El Cucuy is the opposite of a guardian angel. It preys on the disobedient children, and the naughtier the child is, the hungrier El Cucuy becomes. At first, when the child misbehaves, a parent will often tell them, "El Cucuy is going to scratch your feet tonight." That is the warning. But if the child continues and refuses to behave, it will not stop until it devours the child. Legend says that the child goes to a place of no return and suffers the consequences of disobedience. Using fear instead of positive reinforcement like Santa Claus, El Cucuy is easily used to temper a child's destructive and misbehaving behaviors. In Mexico, child abductors are a major problem. These men abduct children off the street and sell them to interested parties, usually for labor. When a child is misbehaving or disobeying, they often wander off away from the home and become potential victims. El Cucuy is used to persuade children to not wander off, as a monster that eats children is certainly scarier than a man offering to get you an ice cream or a soda.
Thank you guys so much for joining me for this particular episode of Fake Folklore. Welcome to my channel if you are new here. I usually read folklore, and I I have a Patreon and a Ko-fi in my About section if you wanted to check those out. And also, thank you to all of the lovely speakers that were here with me throughout the entire episode, giving you guys more context and more accurate information than Eden McCoy ever did in her book. So once again, thank you guys so much, and I will see you all in the next one. Good night.